I've spent too long on TikTok. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. Today's video is brought to you on International Women's Day and I am going to be looking at some female archaeology writers. I'm very excited about that because maybe one day that'll be me, you never know. I am wearing a shirt gifted to me by the charity Yes Woman Up. Every sale made on these t-shirts gives a percentage to women's charities in Australia, so I'll link them in the description. And I love this shirt. God. So most of these books are ones that I have read, others are ones that friends have recommended, and I will hopefully read as soon as possible because they're all, I've read up on them all, I'm not just listing them, but they all look great. I have some of them physically with me. They are all either written by or co-written by women who are either directly or indirectly involved with archaeology. Some of these books I've used with my dissertation, other ones with just general reading and essays in the past. Unfortunately, it was fairly difficult actually to come up with a list of ones that I've read myself because clearly the reading lists that I was using at uni are fairly, well, very male dominated, so this actually has been quite a hard video to plan and research, and that is actually very scary, and I hope that that changes. Saying that, I have read a lot of articles and book contributions
you do
by female writers, but I have tried my best to find books that are completely written by women or edited by, or you know, like the main contributor to the book is a woman. Number one is one of my favourite archaeology books of all time. It is an osteoarchaeology book, which is like human bones, bioarchaeology, the biology of archaeology, and if you've watched any of my previous videos that will make a lot of sense, and that is Mary Lewis's The Bioarchaeology of Children. This book has been in a few of my thumbnails in previous videos because I used it in my dissertation. I don't know if I've oh yeah, there's some highlighting in there. I read this all summer after second year. I've highlighted it, I've put notes in it, and I'm going to carry on reading it because it's really topical for forensic archaeology as well. It is all about children in the archaeological record and what we can learn about their skeletons, what we can't learn about their skeletons, and why quite often they're not represented in the archaeological record. So I would definitely recommend this book. Number two is a book that I read in my first year, and that is Susan Pollock's Ancient Mesopotamia. This book focuses on Mesopotamia from 5000 BC to 2100 BC and draws on contemporary theories and processes to find out what we can learn about prehistory and also the starts of history, because in ancient Mesopotamia they did write things down. This book in particular looks at how different, say, genders and classes responded to changes in economics and ideology, and it's really interesting, and yeah, I would definitely go check that out. Number three is a book that I was recommended by a friend who has spent a lot more years doing archaeology than I have, and that is Black Feminist Archaeology by Whitney Battle-Baptiste. This book looks at how black feminist theory in archaeology can contribute to archaeological history and historical archaeology. Battle-Baptiste essentially discusses how archaeology should be more sensitive to race and gender in making its constructions of the past. So it is a very eye-opening book and essentially tells you why we need to have people of different backgrounds writing our histories, essentially, because everyone has different experiences of the past, don't they, and of the present, and yeah, different understandings of what things might mean. Number four is Engendering Archaeology, and that is by Gero and Conkey. I have read chapters from this book several times to back up various discussions I was talking about in my exam questions and in my essays. In particular, I really enjoy the comparison of the domestic space in what we can learn from archaeology about the domestic space based on the spatial distribution of different cranes and like charred evidence. That case study was based on the pre-Hispanic Andes. When I edit this, I will say if I'm talking rubbish, but I think it was looking at spatial distribution of food remnants in domestic spaces from the pre-Hispanic Andes, and using that Number 5 is another one of my favourites because, once again, it is osteoarchaeology. And that is Ioana Safaya's 2006 The Body as Material Culture. She looks into how, essentially, skeletons and how we change our bodies should be seen as a form of material culture, and I did use this in my exams because a lot of the time, I don't know about your exams, but my exams would have a question on what can we learn about a society from material culture. It might have a specific society in mind, but I would always bring this in as kind of a counter argument to the classic we can use pots to learn this, because a lot of people forget that we can learn so much from the body, such as average age in a population or average age at death in a population, illnesses that were around at the time. If a lot of skeletons have arthritis but they're quite young, then we can see that, you know, in the knees, for example, they might have been doing a lot of scrubbing. Number 6 is this book, and it is by my absolute bae of baes, Alice Roberts. I love her. I've talked about this book before in my practice my interviews video, I can't talk, because I read this before my interviews and I'm yet to finish it. I didn't get all the way through, and it's a very good book. I got to here. It essentially talks about how unlikely it is that we developed as a race, as a human race, as we did, and all of the chance things that had to happen in order for us to get here, and also what we can learn again from the skeleton and, like, say the pelvis, what we can learn from the pelvis, which is kind of sex, and also the ability to walk on 2 legs and give birth easily. Because, fun fact, we can walk on 2 legs now, but that means it is much harder, much more difficult for us to actually give birth out of said pelvis. There you go. Learn something new every day. Number 7 is Betty Kobayashi Ishinman's Sinews of Survival, The Living Legacy of Inuit Clothing. This one is sort of an anthropology book. It's one of the ones where the borders of archaeology and anthropology are a little bit iffy, but because it is looking at clothing as an artefact over time, I have said that it's archaeological. It's at least archaeological skills that are being used. This book looks at 4,000 years of Inuit clothing and how clothing forms an identity, how that identity may have changed over time. It's another one of those really niche ones that you just kind of have to read because the concepts are then applicable to other things, and yeah, it's also a good read. Number 8 is another one that I read in first year, and that is Maria Gimbutas, The Language of the Goddess. This book is quoted and cited in so many other books that I have read, and she does basically a whole series on goddesses throughout archaeology and what their symbolism might mean. She looks at the symbol of the goddess through history by looking at historical sources, mythological sources, ethnography and goddess worship. She basically looks at the symbols as artifacts and artifacts that have these symbols, and I'm going to put some of these symbols that I have learned about on the screen now because they're really interesting. She also looks into matriarchal society and what female god worship essentially throughout history and prehistory might tell us about the matriarchal society. Numero 9, we have Mary Beard, or Mary Bayard, as I should say, and her SPQR. Now, this is one that I haven't actually read. Guilty. I know, I haven't read it yet. Emphasis on yet. I have just had raving reviews from all of my archaeology and classicsy friends. This book, I'd say is more tailored to a wider audience than a straight kind of academic archaeology audience. It's for people who enjoy the Romans, for people who enjoy classical history and Latin and all of these fancy things. The book discusses the rise of Rome and how it still shapes the notions of power, citizenship, responsibility today. It challenges historical perspectives and discusses fact, fiction, myth, and the historical record. So, essentially, it sounds great, and I'm gonna read that, and you should read that. We should all read it. Yep. In fact, give me a thumbs up if you've read it, and let me know what you think in the comments, please. Okay. Finalement, nous avons numéro 10, Shireen Ratnegar and Harappan Archaeology. This book, again, I read in first year and maybe second year as well, but it is a book all about the Indian Harappa civilization, and particularly Mohenjo-Daro, which is such a cool site. I need to go there. The Harappan civilization were very advanced and they've been compared to Rome in the fact that they clearly planned their streets, they planned their buildings, they built so-called monumental architecture. Their streets, for example, had to be something like exactly north, south, east, west, and the ones that ran north, south had to be, I think it was like 6 meters wide, and the ones running east, west had to be 3 meters, or exactly half the width. This book is about elite trade, elite commerce, and about other civilizations that were arguably as, you know, impactful and successful as Rome and Greece, and we just don't know about them, which is really sad because, believe me, it is cool. Google Mohenjo-Daro. They had amazing water management systems. They literally like controlled their rivers, and I think before Rome. Oh yeah, they were really before the Romans. Look at that. 2,500 before Common Era. Before zero. Oof. And that brings us to the end of this video. Thank you for watching it, and if you can go and support these women's charities and get one of these t-shirts, then please do. I hope you have enjoyed. I hope you have learned lots about archaeology. Go keep reading archaeology books, stay interested, and keep supporting equal rights. I will see you in my next video.